Hello, I'm Lachelle Morse. Today I want to talk to you about running math circuits in your classroom. Whether you've never used learning stations or centers in your classroom, or whether you want to make the learning stations you have more effective, I believe we have included resources that you will find helpful. I was teaching in my classroom during a typical week. I was very excited that all of my students were staying together. We were making great progress toward our class learning objectives. During my conference period, my principal came to talk to me. He wanted me to be the faculty representative for a new initiative in the district about learning stations. I told him about how well my class had been doing, about how we'd had a really great day, and about how all of my students were staying together with me and my lessons, how we were all progressing toward our learning objectives. Since it seemed like I was going to have to try the stations one way or another, I decided to sit down and do some research. As I read about how other teachers were using learning stations and learning centers in their classroom, I realized I might not be using my classroom as efficiently as I had thought. In trying to keep my students on schedule, I had been treating all of my students as though they were proceeding in exactly the same way, at exactly the same pace, and yet deep down, I knew that wasn't true. What I realized is that yes, some of my students were very comfortable with the pace of instruction I was setting, but I also realized that some of my students were falling behind because they had gaps in their knowledge or the instruction was moving too quickly for them. I also realized that I was standing in the way from some students progressing as far as they might because I was trying to keep the entire class together. I went back to my classroom to consider, what changes could we make? How could we use the furniture differently, the materials differently, even my own energy differently, so that the lessons would be more effective for more students? I also wanted to avoid what I'd seen in some classrooms, where learning stations became isolated activities and places to park students while teachers did other activities. At lunch, a colleague, Dr. Morse, suggested that instead of looking at isolated activities, I look at it as more of a circuit, where basic skills built into more complex skills, where students had an opportunity to fill in any gaps they might have, but they also had the opportunity to practice lessons in their learning style and to grow wherever possible. I explored more resources and ended up downloading some math circuit cards that I could use to set up my first math learning circuit in my classroom. It took a few lessons before my students were comfortable working on their own, but once we'd established new classroom norms, everyone was much better at getting started. It was great that the students could do the warm-up and the moderate lifting on their own, which freed up my energy to work on the heavy lifting part of the lesson with different students on different days. I was excited how this process worked in my classroom and how this strategy worked with my students. If you are curious about using the math circuit cards we created, please explore this PD Byte by Lodi called How to Run Math Circuit Training. This will give you access to our circuit cards, key articles, and other resources that will even help you create your own circuit cards. If you do create your own, please share them with me. The more we share, the more we grow. Thanks.